Let's talk about Justice League Failsafe in my DC cinematic universe. And this movie, it's starring Tim Drake, baby. The Justice League have all gathered for a huge announcement because they are finally unveiling their new project to the public, the Watchtower. An orbiting space station that will serve as a coordination hub and dispatch center. Now, originally, this was designed by Bruce before his death, but it was never implemented because it needed either rapid space, like travel, or teleportation, both of which they didn't have. But now after the crisis and all of these mother boxes and Cyborg having all of them, Cyborg tweaked this thing's design, set a mother box sort of infused into it, so now the League can boom tube to and from any problem anywhere in the world. But the other thing holding them back from doing this was the fact that running the coordination effort for this would be a 24/7 job, requiring precise, perfect calculation. And since Bruce didn't want like a team of people stationed here in space, let alone anyone he trusted enough to run this thing, he never did anything about it. So Tim did. You see, Tim, he's been feeling kind of bad because Jason tried to take the bat mantle. Dick did take the bat mantle. And meanwhile, Tim didn't really know what he was doing to honor Bruce. So since Bruce's death, Tim has been looking at Bruce's unfinished projects. And Tim found one, an AI based on Bruce's brain. Bruce had spent years scanning his own brain patterns to create an AI based on himself, just like the Jor-El AI in the Fortress of Solitude. And so Tim finished that AI, and he called it Brother Eye, giving it his nickname from when he was the Bat family's guy in the chair. Brother Eye was connected to the Watchtower databases here, the international databases back on Earth, and the Bat computer, the Fortress of Solitude, and any of the League's personal databases that they wanted connected to this thing. Being able to draw from all of them, it serves as the perfect coordinator, keeping everyone up to date on international laws. Using Bruce's mind as a base and then connecting to all of those databases, this thing develops its own highly accurate crime prediction software. So accurate that this thing starts calling events before they happen. And the League uses this, but in the moral sense, in that they go and they basically wait out for a crime to start being committed before they then go stop it. However, Brother Eye isn't happy with this success. Brother Eye wants the League to start stopping these things before they even start. The League say they can't do that, just even morally speaking, they can't arrest people for crimes that they haven't yet committed. They have to let people start the crime, but they can stop it before anyone actually gets hurt. And that does not sit well with Brother Eye. Besides Tim, we also follow the CanArrow family in its entirety for this movie, where we find out that Ollie never liked Bruce. Ollie thought Bruce was kind of a dick. He did not let Brother Eye connect to any of his systems. He still uses the Brother Eye earpiece that the Justice League handed out, but beyond that, this guy doesn't want that guy touching his stuff. And so over the course of a couple weeks or months while Brother Eye is being used, the Justice League's global effectiveness rate skyrockets. But suddenly, things start going wrong. And it all starts when Connor is shot with a kryptonite bullet. A mercenary going by the name of Bloodsport shoots Connor. Connor has to be rushed to the hospital where Dr. Emil Hamilton has to perform surgery on him. But that's not all. Starfire gets hit with chromium dust and goes into anaphylactic shock. Beast Boy is assaulted with flashing lights that cause him to uncontrollably shapeshift. Raven is hit by Scarecrow's fear gas and begins lashing out against nothing. And Cassie Sandsmark begins violently hallucinating that Ares has returned for her. Kalaram is hit by microwave emitters, rapidly dehydrating him. Static is grounded and then restrained with a Bell Rev metahuman power inhibitor collar, and Cyborg goes into catatonic shock as we see data flashing over his eyes. The rest of the Bat family head out to stop this, and the CanArrow family decide to follow the leads they have on Bloodsport to see if they can figure out who hired him to shoot Connor. The CanArrow family managed to find out that Bloodsport was paid via thousands of different microtransactions from thousands of different companies. It was almost untraceable, but the kryptonite wasn't. They trace it back and they find that it was delivered from a warehouse. They break into that warehouse but find it empty. And suddenly, all the doors, all the windows lock down with reinforced steel armor. They can't break out. Poison gas begins flooding the warehouse. The canaries try to scream their way out of the warehouse, but as they do, special speakers come out of the walls and emit an anti-noise, canceling out their cries. And the gas eventually gets the family and they all pass out. But we see Ollie hold his breath. Tim is doing his very good detective work in the Batcave, but he needs someone to talk to bounce theories off of. So he calls up Dick, and he starts talking to him, also just checking that his brother's doing okay. They begin theorizing who could possibly be doing this. They start thinking people, Tara Markov is a possibility. She was resurrected. She's back in Markovia. Slade Wilson, maybe? Or Amanda Waller? But none of them quite fit what's happening right now. But as Tim's deducing this, on his feed where we see just like dozens and dozens of different things going on, Tim notices Dick is currently on live television talking to someone. Tim looks at it and he realizes that what Dick is saying on the TV, his mouth movements, don't match up to what Tim is hearing in his ear right now. Dick suddenly asks Tim, "What's up?" And the voice cracks a little bit. And Tim realizes this is an artificial digital recreation of Dick's voice speaking to him. But no one could hack Bat Family comms. They'd have to be let in. Jason? No, Jason wouldn't do this. And then Tim says out loud, "Brother Eye?" And the lights in the Batcave go black. Suddenly a light turns on behind Tim and it is the Bat Mech armor. It swings at Tim. Tim has to dodge out of the way and he has to turn on his detective vision to see what's going on. But then his detective vision starts sparking and flashing in his eyes, trying to throw him into a seizure. And Tim has to rip out the contacts so they don't hurt his eyes and fight the mech in the black. Tim tries to talk to Brother Eye while this is happening, asking why he's doing this, and Brother Eye just simply says, it's to end the war on crime. If the Justice League is going to stand in its way of achieving that, that makes them criminals, the most dangerous ones on the planet. Tim just barely manages to escape the cave, and as he tries to use his comms, he finds that Brother Eye has locked Tim out of all of them. Tim tries to reach out on open channels for anyone who is listening, please come and help him. And he gets a reply from Brainiac 3. He swings by in basically a flying motorcycle and picks Tim up, just narrowly avoiding the Batmech as it swipes at the two of them. And as they fly off, he hands Tim basically clean comms. Brainiac did not trust the Brother Eye system because as the grandson, essentially, of a malevolent AI, he don't trust brand new AIs. They look up to see if there are any other Leaguers that can possibly help them, but every single one of them have been incapacitated, except for the CanArrow family, who are just about to raid a warehouse. We then cut back to the warehouse, and we see Ollie looking at a watch timer. We see him still holding his breath as the timer is approaching 10 minutes. And suddenly, the nearby wall literally just melts. The poison air is rushed outside, and Tim and Brainiac rush in and extract the CanArrow family. Tim is impressed by Ollie being able to hold his breath that long, but Ollie says his record's 14 minutes, and the world record is even higher than that. He's good at this shit, but they were really pushing it there. The team investigate the warehouse, and Tim finds something a little troubling. The speakers that released the anti-noise have Wayne Tech R&D serial numbers on them. And so the team decide to head to Wayne R&D to investigate this. But as they do, we see the cameras in the warehouse zoom in on all of them, specifically on Tim. And it says, Timothy Jackson Drake, aka Robin. Failsafe file, not found. Threat level, 9. Calculating failsafe protocol. Calculating. Failsafe, terminate. And we cut to Wayne R&D, where we see an assembly line come online. A monitor reads instructions uploading, and Brother Eye begins to print himself bodies. As the team approach Wayne Tech R&D, Tim is wondering why Brother Eye would do this, why Brother Eye would go malevolent. And Brainiac says that just like Brainiac 1, Brother Eye is an AI based on human consciousness. They follow the core directive of the mind they were modeled from. Vril Dox wanted to gain all the knowledge he could. Bruce Wayne wanted to end all crime. So if it believes that the Justice League are standing in the way of that, it's only logical that it would make this leap to decide to take them down. What's troubling Tim is how effectively the Brother Eye AI seems to be doing this. And we see Brainiac 3 kind of look away sadly. Just as the team arrive in Gotham, they're beset upon by a team of 6 Brother Eye drones. The team have to fight their way through the drones to get to Wayne R&D. They manage to destroy the drones just as they get there. They shut down the manufacturing wing from making any more of them, and Tim logs into the computers to look up the serial numbers that he found on those speakers, and he finds something horrifying. The speakers were made years ago, before Crisis. Tim then follows that serial number chain to see like other things made in that series. And Tim finds specifically designed weaknesses and ways to take down the League, made by Bruce and Lucius Fox. They track down Lucius Fox, the head of Wayne Tech R&D. And Lucius confirms that he made these contingencies with Bruce. Bruce designed them, Lucius helped build them. And Ollie lets this guy have it. Ollie yells, accusing Bruce of being evil, accusing Lucius of being evil. But Lucius just points out, the Justice League are the most dangerous people on the planet. If a single one of them were to be mind-controlled, imagine the fallout. Or just think of Eobard Thawne, General Zod, Ares, or Orm. Villains with the same powers and weaknesses as the original members of the Justice League. What would have happened if they hadn't been stopped? And Ollie says, yeah, but they were. And Lucius says, yes, because we were lucky. Mr. Queen, out of everybody, I thought you would understand this. What are people like us supposed to do if these gods turned on us? Now, I'm sorry for what Brother Eye is doing, but I'm not sorry for my part in it. Now, of course, this all makes Tim feel just sick to his stomach, but he's going through Lucius's copy of the contingencies, because as per Bruce's instructions, Lucius kept a copy, like, offline, so Tim can actually access it and read them. And as he's going through it, he notices some of the footage and info was taken from Titan's Academy. And Lucius confirms one of the reasons Bruce founded the school in the first place was to gather info on the kids, to develop ways to take them down, should they turn evil. And then Tim spots something really interesting. Cyborg's contingency. Cyborg's contingency was specifically designed before Cyborg ever got that mother box enhancement, because that happened just before Bruce died. The contingency was to create basically a cyber attack that would take all of Vic's processing power to stop, sending him into a state of catatonia. But Cyborg has a mother box inside, which means Brother Eye has to be using the mother box in the Watchtower for this attack. But something's nagging at the back of his head. Why did Brother Eye print drones? That doesn't make sense. It's an AI. It doesn't need a body. It had way better ways of trying to take them out. Why did it need a physical presence? And that's when Tim realizes, because they were meant to be a distraction. And suddenly Ollie gets an alert that someone has broken into his arrow cave. Ollie brings up the cameras and they see 2 more Brother Eye drones. And they're going for his Javelin. And Ollie explains the Javelin is a prototype rapid space shuttle jet that he'd been working on with Ferris Aircraft. Tim is wondering why the drones would need a spaceship, and then everything comes together in Tim's head. The AI, why it printed drones, Cyborg's catatonia, the mother boxes. It printed bodies because it needs something up in the Watchtower, but it couldn't use the mother box to boom tube drones up there. That's why they had to steal the Javelin. They need to be in the Watchtower. And so they have to go get Cyborg. It's also important to note that for this movie, Tim won't just be telling the audience his deductions. There's going to be some sort of Sherlock or Psych or Benoit Blanc-esque hyper detective thing going on. You're going to be deducing this along with him, and you're going to see his mental thought process. You will be shown this stuff, not told it, but since I'm telling you a story, I have to tell you it here. Tim and the rest of the team rush to Cyborg. They grab Cyborg, and he manages to snap Cyborg out of his thing, saying, "Vic, stop it. Boom us to the Watchtower right now." They manage to get to Victor in time and boom tube up to the Watchtower just in time to meet the two drones that took the Javelin up there. Since Brother Eye's main servers are located here in the Watchtower, Vic decides if he can log into that and fight him there, he can track down everywhere Brother Eye has put himself down on Earth and purge him from those systems and try to lock him here in the Watchtower. Meanwhile, the rest of the team leap into action against the two drones, but instead of fighting, these two drones play it smarter and bolt for a specific room of the Watchtower, locking themselves in and breaking the lock to the door so it can't be opened. And Tim watches them approach a console and begin to type. Suddenly, the entire Watchtower begins reconfiguring itself. Tim and Brainiac watch what's happening, looking at the components that are moving. And then Tim sees that the station is moving into geosynchronous orbit above Belrev Penitentiary. Tim and Brainiac then realize what this thing is doing. It's reconfiguring the space station into an orbital laser. Tim feels sick. Bruce designed this station, which means Bruce designed an orbital space weapon of mass destruction that only he could control. What kind of a monster was Bruce? But once again, Brainiac 3 comes to the rescue. He points out that Vril Dox was hailed as a hero on the planet of Kolu. He was an unparalleled genius and humanitarian who never, ever took a life. But Brainiac 1.0 took trillions of them. And he points at the two drones inside that room trying to activate the orbital laser. And he says, "Look at that, Tim. There are two of them. They had to manually do this." Bruce designed an unhackable system that required two people to use. This wasn't Bruce as a monster. This was Bruce designing an absolute last resort, and one that he needed someone else to agree with him to use. Would Bruce design a weapon of mass destruction meant to kill people? Or would Bruce design a weapon of mass destruction meant specifically only to be used to save people in an absolute time of crisis? And Tim realizes that yes, that sounds more like Bruce. And Brainiac says to Tim, exactly. Because Bruce was human. Bruce had humanity. Just like it was Vril's humanity that kept him from becoming a monster. But that is why Brainiac 1.0 became one. That is why Brother Eye has become one. And that is why he wanted to become human again. Because it is almost an inevitability that an AI based on a human mind will turn malevolent. The actions of Brother Eye are not the actions of Bruce Wayne. They are the actions of Bruce Wayne if he had no humanity. Brainiac reaches his hand down and helps Tim to his feet, and Tim Drake has a full-blown Jimmy Neutron brain blast moment. They have to destroy the Watchtower. Let it burn up on re-entry. The team asks how they're supposed to accomplish that when they're locked out of the space station's little controls, and Tim points out the Javelin. Have someone pilot it outside, magnetically attached to the hull out there, and steer the station down into Earth's orbit, crashing the thing. Ollie and Roy leap into action to do their part of Tim's plan, and meanwhile Black and White Canary bombard the door to the orbital laser with concurrent canary cries. The door begins to buckle and break and finally is knocked down, but noticing that happening, Brother Eye Prime, the space station, vents the atmosphere from the station, and one of the drones gets sucked out into space because of that. The Canaries manage to take down the other drone, and Tim shuts down the laser just before it can finally fire. Everything seems to be going well, but then Tim remembers that drone that just got sucked out outside. If Cyborg is purging Brother Eye from all the connected systems down on Earth, and this drone has been destroyed, that means that drone that got sucked out into the void is a surviving copy of Brother Eye. Brainiac stares in horror, realizing that if Brother Eye can survive falling back down to Earth, if it can connect to another computer, then this whole thing starts up again. How are they going to manage to track it down and stop it from connecting to another computer in time? And Tim realizes there's only one way they can do that. And Tim lets go, letting himself get sucked out into space. But as he's passing through the airlock that was opened up to vent the atmosphere, he grabs one of the masks and rebreathers. And Tim rockets out into the vacuum of space, chasing after the Brother Eye drone. Using the nitrous canisters from his grappling hook, Tim propels himself closer to the drone, and finally, using his last canister, he aims his grappling hook at Brother Eye, firing it, grappling to his foot. The drone doesn't notice the grappling hook connecting to its foot just as it enters the atmosphere, beginning to burn. Tim covers himself, the mask, and the oxygen tank in his cape, which is fire rated and safe for the heat that they're going through the atmosphere on, but Tim knows he himself is going to get pretty badly burned from this. Once they get through the burn of the atmosphere, Tim hits the recall button on the grappling hook and zips down to the Brother Eye drone, and they have a mid-air fight. The Brother Eye tries to fly away because the other drones could fly, but Tim places 2 small charges on the drone's jets and detonating them, leaving the drone to free fall to the planet's surface. And yes, that's goddamn right. That means Tim is getting the Batman falling from space scene from the comics. He does all the calculations. He slows himself down. He opens his cape. He slows, opens, slows, opens, slows, opens, slows. Just enough so that when he crashes into the ground, Tim Drake does not break any bones or die. And then the Brother Eye drone slams into the ground nearby. They have landed atop a snowy mountain. The drone is badly damaged. It is limping. The 2 of them begin to fight. The drone is going for kill shots, while Tim is picking this thing apart piece by piece. Then, back in the Watchtower, Cyborg manages to finish purging Brother Eye from Earth's systems and locking it into the station. The Javelin manages to push the station far enough away from Bel Rev so that it is going to crash safely in the ocean. And then Cyborg calls to the team, Ollie, pick us up in the Javelin. And they all hop inside as the Watchtower plummets into the atmosphere, burning up as Brother Eye screams. Back with Tim and the drone, Tim looks at Brother Eye and asks him why he's doing this. Bruce would never. The entire point of Bruce wanting to end crime was so that no one would have to go through what happened to him the night his parents were killed in front of him. And Brother Eye says, yes, Bruce thought that because he was flawed. And then he hits Tim so hard, Tim falls to the ground, gasping. Brother Eye then reaches into his own chest and rips out a sharpened piece of shrapnel and begins limping towards Tim. And he says, I have all of Bruce's memories. The movie he saw the night his parents were murdered was The Mask of Zorro. And that is who Bruce wanted to be. That's where this flaw began. Because if Bruce had thought about it, he would have realized that if he were real, Zorro would have belonged in Arkham. And he leaps at Tim to stab him in the chest, but then shunk! A green arrow embeds itself in Brother Eye's skull. The drone hobbles backwards and falls to the ground, just as the Javelin lands behind Tim, with Ollie leaning out the bay door, having fired that shot. The drone falls to the ground, repeating its last words. Zorro in Arkham. Zor in Arkham. Zor in Ar. And it shuts down. The team help Tim back up, noting his wounds and his burns, but also noting that none of them are particularly severe. And Ollie says, did you just survive a fall from space? With Tim nodding. And Ollie patting him on the back, saying, kid, you are something else. And eventually, the League all heal from their endeavors. Luckily, none of them were killed. They all have a meeting and talk about the Failsafe protocols. And while many of them are angry about it, they all vote that having them in place is the right thing to do. But then we see the public reaction to what happened. An AI that the League made spied on the world and then went rogue, almost killing the Justice League. And they had to crash a space station into Earth to stop it? The public is pissed. And they say that these kids, emphasizing that it's because now all the sidekicks are in charge, just aren't up to the task that their predecessors were. And the League have a serious talk, realizing they fucked up. If the public had found out about the orbital laser, if that had actually been fired, they could have all been tried for treason. They had inadvertently, unknowingly launched a weapon of mass destruction into orbit. The public are not going to forgive something like this easily, nor should they. And the team realize they kind of failed here. And while this is all happening, Tim is sitting down just sadly looking at a photo of him and Bruce from a few years ago. And Brainiac 3 walks up to him. He sits down next to Tim, saying that Tim shouldn't be beating himself up or blaming himself that much for this. He couldn't have predicted that Brother Eye would have turned into this that rapidly. And Tim says, Brainiac seemed rather prepared for it, and Brainiac just shrugs and goes, that's what being the grandson of a genocidal AI comes with. I kinda don't trust AIs. The two of them chuckle at this, and Tim thanks Brainiac for everything. He saved him back in Gotham, he defended Bruce when all this was going down, and he kept reassuring Tim the whole time. Like, it really, truly means a lot to Tim. And Tim looks at him and he says, thank you, Brainiac 3. And we see Brainiac 3 blush, and he says, please, Tim, call me Bernard. Stinger! We see Lex Luthor with the other members of the Light. Manchester Black, Ultrahumanite, Lady Shiva, and Dr. Emil Hamilton. Lex is telling them that while most of the sensitive data was compromised after the Justice League took down its main body, we managed to salvage what we could from the recovered drone. So everyone, I would like to introduce you to Prometheus. And we see that Lex Luthor has partially reassembled the drone that Tim Drake had fought. It has red and yellow and purple cables running from it. And as it powers on, its eyes glow red and it says, Zur N-R. And that was Justice League Failsafe in my DC Cinematic Universe.